Welcome back to the January edition of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz. We're really happy that you're with us. And I have a special guest for this segment, one of the fine priests of the Archdiocese of Louisville, Father Martin Linebach. Father Martin, thank you so much for being present here.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And we have a lot of things to talk about. First of all, I need to brag. You've been such a magnificent pastor at St. Patrick Church, and that's a big church, it's a big school, and boy, there's a lot of life there, so thank you for that leadership.
It's a privilege to be their pastor. There's lots of good folks there, so I always like to say, mostly what I do is just show up, and then they direct me in the right way.
They love you showing up, I'll tell you this. And the other thing, and a very important thing that you have done even longer, has been to be the Ecumenical and Interfaith officer for the Archdiocese. This is many times work that goes on behind the scenes. I personally benefit from this because so often you and I work together on issues regarding ecumenism, or the relationship with other Christians, or interfaith, people who are not Christians but of various faiths. So we'll talk a little bit about it. January is the perfect time to do this. As you well know, the prayer for Christian unity occurs January. I think this year it's January 18 to 25. Would you tell us a little bit about maybe where that came from, or a little bit of the history?
I sure will. You know, it's kind of to the credit of the Catholic Church that it actually was a priest from New York who came with the idea. It was 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, in 1908, and originally called the prayer of Christian of the Unity for Prayer for Octave and the 8 days.
Oh, good.
We would set aside really to do two things: to pray for each other, all the different Christian churches, and then, when it's appropriate, to pray with each other. Mm-hmm. Not that at that point in history did I think we didn't like each other, right, but there was just a separation, right, and there wasn't the cooperation or the collaboration, or even, to use the word today, the conversations that have been happening for over a century now. In 1966, the Vatican Congregation that works with Ecumenism for Christian Unity and the World Council of Churches, their Faith and Order Commission, joined together to collaborate together and to promote what then was renamed the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity.
So this was right after the Second Vatican Council. Exactly. And the document on ecumenism. Decree on
Ecumenism. There are really two important documents. One that deals with our relationship with the other Christian churches, and that came right out of the Second Vatican Council. Mm-hmm. Became very, very important to the fathers of the Church to kind of open our minds and our hearts and to develop. I always like to say that both ecumenism and interreligious efforts are really based on our relationship with each other, and establishing friendships, getting to know one another. So there are really two levels. And then, of course, with the interreligious, we live in a different world today where we can have communication and an experience of each other in centuries before that were not possible.
Well, we have many things here, don't we? We have the good relationships in general. I know with the heads of what we call judicatory heads. We have the Center for Interfaith Relations, and we have so many good things that are going on. There are challenges too, aren't there? And that's one of the things I know our viewing audience would want us to talk about as we seek to, in a sense, bring about that unity that Jesus prayed for at the Last Supper. I mean, when you think of it, the night before he died, praying that they might be one. We need to take that very seriously, and respect for those who are not followers of Jesus, who are people of deep faith, and even people, as our Holy Father said, who are searchers. What would be some of the challenges that we need to be mindful of and overcome as we seek to do this?
That's a good question. I want to kind of separate it into maybe a little bit of a larger picture, if you will, and then more on a local or a pastoral level, what might be happening in the churches. folks that are much more intelligent than I kind of work on the theological issues and things that the beliefs of the particular churches that might be different, and an understanding of those and why a particular church might either believe or practice what they do that might be different. And then I think there's also on the local level. So the theologians and the experts in theology can work with that, and we learn from that. On a very local level, on a very pastoral or practical level, as I thought about it in my work in Ecumenism and Interreligious, that in some ways it's a little bit of a reflection of the culture and maybe even the American culture, that we can tend to be individualistic. Mm-hmm. So there's one avenue, I think, that we'll just do our own thing over here. And I don't really need to either have a relationship or communicate. Or the opposite challenge would be that, well, does it really matter? Does it really matter that I'm Catholic or Methodist or Presbyterian or Jewish or Muslim? Well, it does. We all have kind of the call from God and how we're to live out our particular faith. So when you start to...
That's good. I like those two limits. On the one hand, if we simply look for what they call the least common denominator, or what I think the big word they use today is syncretism, as you said, what does it matter? Unfortunately, what happens is we lose the richness of our belief, and often people tend to give up their beliefs or their traditions and their convictions of faith. I remember one of my good friends, Dr. Timothy George, he talks a little bit about ecumenism of conviction and not ecumenism of accommodation. In other words, that we don't just forget the beliefs and convictions, but we respect. Right, exactly. We respect where the differences are. Exactly. That's very good. There's a lot of things that are happening locally, and when you look at the horizons, I know you've been involved in reaching out, in many cases working in the Jewish community, in the Islam community, in interfaith gatherings, but also in the ecumenical community. What are some of the bright spots, some of the things that you're thrilled about? Because I know you are involved in many things.
I just I'm on the board, executive board for the Kentucky Council of the Churches, just by virtue of my representing you in the Office of Ecumenism and Interreligious work.
And Marion is
and Dr. Taylor, and at our last one, which was in December, it was interesting to me, the new president of the Kentucky Council of Churches, Dr. Greg Alexander, which would be in the Disciples of Christ Church, kind of your counterpart.
I know him very well from Lexington.
He shared with me that he is working on a degree in spiritual direction.
Oh.
And he's doing that at a Benedictine institution in Indiana.
Oh.
So that's one of the, I think on the horizons, the Catholic tradition has this wonderful practice of spiritual direction. Maybe the Disciples of Christ or some of the mainline Protestant traditions didn't have that so much. Mm-hmm. So what can we learn from each other? Dr. Taylor has shared with me when she was working on her doctorate that she went to Haiti, and it was the Oblate Sisters that she lived with, and they were able to show her to get the information and the experience in Haiti that she was working on, and she's talked to me about how that has changed her life.
Oh, that's great. Well,
one of the newer
I know there's so many things that you're involved in. Our time now has come to an end, and I think it means that I'm going to have to get you back here to kind of talk a little more. Thanks for giving us a taste, and I know it's only the beginning of what it means to be truly ecumenical in a way that allows our conviction of faith and open to people of all faiths. We're very grateful for the work you do. And thank you for being
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And I want to thank all of you for being part of this January edition of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz. If you have questions or comments, please send them our way, because we like to learn from you. And please join us again next month, when in February we have another episode of Conversations. May God bless you.